Hello and welcome to the Dyson Leadership podcast. And this episode is going to be more of an update in regards to the status of the podcast. So you might have noticed that it's been a little sporadic on episodes here lately, and I want to share a little bit as to why that is the case, and also share with you what the future of the podcast is going to look like. So there's been several weeks where I've not had an episode to upload, and this is for a variety of different reasons. So some of the guests that I had scheduled canceled unexpectedly or asked to reschedule, and then proceeded to continue to ask to reschedule repeatedly. It was very frustrating to try to get those on the calendar. There were other guests who I had reached out to and asked people to be part of the podcast and come on and speak to a specific topic. And I received multiple rejections from those people. And those rejections typically were, unless you have an audience size of thousands or such a large group of people that you're reaching, then I don't want to come on and speak, which is not the purpose of this podcast. There were also several people that reached out to me that I rejected from being on the podcast because the only thing that they wanted to do was come on and just be an infomercial. They saw this podcast strictly as a way to come on and promote and sell their product, which most guests that I've had on has some connection to a book, a program, or some service that they offer. And I've always been fine with allowing them to share that at the end of the podcast or incorporating it into the overall topic, with the caveat that some conversation and something we talked about would be value added to the podcast and the podcast audience. But there were some that reached out and they had nothing to add other than just, I want to tell people about my product, or I want to tell people about my book. I want to tell people about my service. And that's not the purpose of this podcast. This podcast was designed and intended to add value to people and to bring leaders from all different walks and areas of life, and for them to be able to share and add value to this podcast audience and those that were in my network, to add value to you in a way that is unique from the way that I speak and add value to you. So it really put me at a dilemma as to what to do with this podcast, because the direction it was going, the guests that I had the opportunity to bring on, I still have some that were really good, valuable guests, but there was really a limited number of guests that I was able to find that truly had the heart and intention that aligned with this podcast, that they were willing to come on and just add some value to you. And I'm not going to come on and just give you infomercials and give you people that just want to sell you products. It's not the purpose of this. Yes, I'm a business owner. Yes, I'm trying to sell my services. Yes, I have things that I want to promote and to sell. You might, in future episodes of this podcast or on YouTube, hear me reference those or maybe provide some update to those. But there's going to be some value add in addition to that. It's not going to be just an infomercial mixed in. It's something that really was challenging for me. And so I think for the future of this podcast, what you're actually going to see is two things for this year in 2024. This was a hard decision, but here is what this podcast is going to be. You're going to shift and maybe only see one episode specifically related to this podcast every month. So we're currently in February. You will likely see something towards the end of February and towards the end of every month. I'm still working on the date of when those are going to be posted. And more than likely, most of those are just going to be me coming on and teaching and talking about a leadership concept to add value to you, because that's my heart. That's my desire, is to add value to you. So you're going to see less guest related, and you're going to see more of me coming on just to teach and to share. Now, that does not mean that there won't be guests in the future. There are some people that they very may return if they were a past guest, or there are people I still have in my network that they may have something really important that I want to get out there and to share with you. Those are people that may still appear as guests, but they are going to be people who join to add value, not to just sell a book or a product. And like I said, most everybody that I've had on the podcast, they have had services or books, but they have been fantastic guests in the sense of they wanted to add value and truly talk about things there were a lot of podcast interviews when we got done and talking to the guests. They said, man, I wish we could have gone further. I wish we could have kept talking. There's so much more that I want to explain and dive into. And even a couple of those guests we've talked about, doing a part two and revisiting and coming back. There's even people, it's the same when I've been on their podcast about doing a part two or revisiting different topics, because there is value to be added. There's quality conversations that can be had. And it's not just about selling some product, book, or service. So with that, for the Dyson Leadership Podcast, look for new episodes that are coming at the end of every single month. But what I'm going to shift my time and focus is on two separate things. You are still going to see short form content on my social media platforms. If you haven't, be sure to go follow me on social media and look for those. I've done a lot of clips of the podcast, but you're going to start seeing hopefully some more things that are some simple management tips, leadership tips, maybe even some HR related, interview, resume types of tips, things that add value to the professional. Things that add value to you as somebody who's maybe a job seeker, a professional, a leader, or something of that nature. Look for short form content that is related to that. But you're also going to see me hopefully post a little bit more on YouTube that are true dedicated YouTube videos as opposed to just this podcast. If you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see where I've recorded videos in the past. And it's very similar to just a solo podcast episode, but
maybe you're not really interested in these services and what Dyson Leadership offers, and that's perfectly fine. There's no issue in that whatsoever. The things that I'm really passionate about and I want to get out there are courses and trainings that truly do impact people regardless of where they live, regardless if they're here locally in the Catawba Valley area that I live, or if you're in another country. Those are things such as managing the multi-generational workforce as an online course, time management, goal setting, and other leadership related topics and soft skill related topics that will be out there as online courses. But on my YouTube and future topics here on the podcast, you're going to see a mix of leadership, personal development, communication, things that really add value to you wherever you are, whatever walk of life, whatever career, vocation, things that will help you become a better person so that you can go and lead others well. That's the desire of this podcast. That's what I want to do. And so with that, the podcast is changing. It will still be around, just in a different capacity. But my promise to you is this podcast will not be just an infomercial. It is not going to be something where we just bring people on for the sake of bringing people on to sell you a product or a service or try to get something from you to them. This is going to be something that adds value to you so that you can go add value to others. You can impact and grow in your personal life, your professional life, impact and grow your community, your church, your organization, and truly just add value. That is the goal and intent of this podcast. So I want to thank you for being a listener. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being part of this journey. I do ask you, please go follow along on social media. That is a way to stay connected, see updates from what's going on, what I'm doing, and be able to see what the future of Dyson Leadership and the Dyson Leadership podcast holds. You'll be able to see more of what's going on, what's happening. So again, thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of my audience. Thank you for being a loyal listener. And do check back because we are still going to be posting episodes. So don't unfollow, don't unsubscribe. Stay tuned. There is more coming to add value to you very soon. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And join me again for an episode again very soon.